welcome once again to the Coles Brown Show, heard exclusively right here on the Open Mic Broadcast Network and Spreaker.com. Today's guest menu, it looks simply like this. In hour number one, he is the chair of the FAMU Sports Hall of Fame at Florida A&M University and a FAMU athletic historian and Baton Rouge native, Alvin Hollins. He'll join me at 10:15, of course, to talk about the big news of the week. Florida A&M University, they're in the Southwestern Athletic Conference. We'll talk a lot about that, different perspectives. Following Alvin Hollins, Brandon B.J. Jones of HBCU Game Day will join me, give his perspective on the big move that will actually happen a year from now, but officially they're in FAMU. He'll join me. Then in hour number two, Vice President and Director of Athletics at Florida A&M University, Courtney Gaucher. He'll join me to talk all about the move to the Southwestern Athletic Conference. And then after Mr. Gaucher, Charles Edmond of the Alcorn State Radio Network in a SWAC report. He'll join us as well. So a lot to talk about on today's show. Simply what's trending on the Coles Brown Show. Southern University and Grambling State University to play LSU in football. Now it's official. Well, it was always official with Southern a few months ago, but now Grambling State University is added to the mix. We'll get your thoughts on LSU, Southern, and Grambling State playing in football in the upcoming years. And, of course, Florida A&M University, a new member in the Southwestern Athletic Conference. Good morning to everyone, and as always, I'll check in with the good doctor, Michael Prince. Dr. Prince, good morning to you.
Good morning, sir. How are you today?
I'm doing fine after just an emotional week. And what I just talked about and what we're going to talk about, you still have COVID-19, the virus, the pandemic. You have another virus that's been here a long, long time, racism to deal with, white supremacy, and now a storm in the Gulf that people in the Gulf states, Louisiana in particular, got to get ready to deal with that. But other than that, outstanding. How about yourself?
Well, it's always something going on, and it's important that we stay focused on the big picture, and a lot of these things will take care of themselves in due season. But we're going to hold on, man, and hopefully you and your queen stay out of harm's way in every aspect, from the storm, from the COVID, from all the attacks, both naturally and spiritually, and keep fighting the good fight, brother.
And that's all we can do. Thank God there is a God.
Amen and hallelujah.
So with that being said, of course, the big news, Florida A&M University now becoming a member of the Southwestern Athletic Conference. What was your initial thoughts when you heard the news?
Well, when you hear the news, what was encouraging was the day before with the Board of Trustees that were meeting, and it flew through with flying colors. And then you say, well, tomorrow, which was that Thursday, it would just be dotting I's and crossing T's. And it was exciting and engaging, and well-deserved. And I'm thinking from both parties. And it instantly solidifies, especially from the football spectrum, the Southwestern Athletic Conference. It's an upgrade. It's an upgrade, and it's an exciting upgrade, and can't wait to see it come to full pass.
Yeah, you look, just a quick analysis, rich tradition athletically, FCS championship, back then we called it 1AA in 1978. I personally witnessed some of the athletic competition on the gridiron between FAMU and Southern University. That's classic in itself. Now they'll get a chance to reestablish those rivalries with the Grambling State, with the Jackson State, with an Alcorn, with a Prairie View. So, from a football standpoint, everyone locks in on that. But also, you look at other programs. They just hired a women's basketball coach. On the men's side, they're trying to turn the corner on some things, and Courtney will be able to discuss that at full length a little bit later on in the show. And then baseball, some success. I would say, very good program. And of course, you have your spring sports. So to me, it's a no-brainer. It's a good fit. And now you just, like with any relationship, you have to nurture it. That beginning is so exciting. It's outstanding. You do everything to court each other and make each other happy. Then you just have to sustain it.
Absolutely, absolutely. And when it brings an insight, an interesting insight to that of the commissioner's race, from the beginning, when at a glance, looking at FAMU, they're coming in with some very strong softball program and a very strong football program. The other ones are still under construction, if you allow me to say it that way, but under construction in the right direction. And it immediately, from my vantage point, it puts some pressure on some of the existing schools that are already within the conference on, what are they going to do to step their game up? And the competition just got a little bit more stiff for those who are already a part of the SWAC. So, like I said, it's going to be exciting from both ends of the spectrum to see how one reposition himself in the pecking order of the Southwestern Athletic Conference.
And then a long-awaited football game, Southern, Grambling State. Now, I've made comments about that in the past. As far as competition on the field, it is what it is. Let's just be brutally honest. LSU will be favored. They will win the football game. But you look at other things as far as the tailgating and the financial reward for both Grambling State and Southern University. So there are some good things you could point out from a historical standpoint, playing on the field. And I know from an emotional standpoint, from a social standpoint, there are people who are not going to be happy about it. They're not going to go. And then there are those who are going to feel the opposite. It's going to happen. And so both Southern and Grambling State will benefit from the financial reward, if you get my drift, as far as them playing football. Now, they've played in other sports, of course, basketball and baseball being in those areas. So it's going to happen. Southern Jaguars, September 10th, 2022, and Grambling on September 9th, 2023. So there you have it. Well, LSU has made a point of playing, every institution in the state in football, and if they're able to start on time this year and finish it out, they'll play Nicholls State this year, and then they'll finish out with Southern and Grambling State.
Well, that's exciting and good news, and I'm excited about the dates because I could safely assume, even though we use the term assume loosely, that we'll definitely have a much clearer answer for this virus by those dates that have been set, so there won't be any chances of that game being interrupted. So kudos to Grambling and to Southern, your beloved Southern, I might add.
Yes, beloved. And for those who will make it to the game, they'll let me know how the atmosphere, how it was. Hopefully, because you remember last week I talked to Coach Banks, and still getting conversation about his appearance on the Coles Brown Show last week. Basically, people, the feedback, transparent. He laid it on the line talking about his concerns, and you could hear it in his voice. He said it's going to take 3 or 4 years to kind of get back to pre-pandemic. And this thing is still ever changing every day. Every director of athletics that I've talked to last month and a half, they basically stated that. And speaking of that, you saw where at the University of Alabama, some student athletes already have tested positive for the COVID-19. So it is what it is. It's not going to be the last time it happens.
Hey, that's like the song, "We've Only Just Begun."
Yeah. So it'll be interesting. No matter how much money you have, as far as an athletic program or institution, millions and millions of dollars. The virus is still pretty much undefeated, if we can use it in that term. There are people who have caught it and, they've rebounded, and there are those who haven't. So the point is, you can have the best of plans. As a listener told me, everyone has a great plan until they get hit in the mouth. And I guess he was using the boxing analogy.
Mike Tyson.
Yeah, and how you respond to adversity. So it's going to be interesting. FAMU, yeah. Orange and green. Those colors, you want to get them. But, yeah, great institution. And kind of looking at social media, Mr. Gaucher's been all over doing what he's supposed to do, selling his program. And we're going to talk to him in hour number 2 and give a timeline, a process of how this started. And looking at an article that I used for reference, he mentioned about the football game last year. The Southern came in, and a big windfall. It was a win-win, $285,000.
Oh yeah, that's a good day, especially on an FCS level. He also, if those who were not able to catch the board of directors meeting by way of Zoom, they were a little bit revealing as far as when the actual process started. But I'll let others decipher that one.
And he basically went on to say it in the article that the highest revenue singular MEA game last fall totaled $75,000. So you do the math, 285 to 75,000. Yeah,
I'll take
money.
I'll take
matters.
door number 2, please.
Yeah, let's make a deal, and we'll talk about the logistics of leaving the MEAC, and just several topics within the interview that I'm going to get his perspective on. And he's a Birmingham, Alabama native. So it's just going to be interesting. And then let the speculation begin. There's a plan, I'm sure, by the conference to adjust to a 12 team. There's a plan if it's just 11. And I got a chance to hear Dr. McClellan on social media talking about it. He hasn't sought out any institution. But FAMU reached out to the conference. And so with that being said, they're going to expand in due time. Now, that's my opinion.
It's not necessary to expand for the sake of expanding. Okay, with this landing of FAMU, everybody lined up from 1 through 11, and the cream is going to always rise to the top. 1 play 2 for the SWAC championship, and if the Celebration Bowl is still in place, that person goes on to represent the conference against the MEAC in the Celebration Bowl. So I would love to see it go in that way. And in the event we get a 12th team, then we can possibly talk about going back to the East and West. But I like it with one conference.
Well, it's still a lot of things that have to happen. I mean, if I had a question, what is the state of the Celebration Bowl going forward? Ideally, yeah, you could do it with 11 teams, but I personally prefer 12. And I had an Alcorn State alum contact me on social media and said, Carlos, you're talking about East and West, but Alcorn State, we've defeated Grambling before. We've defeated Southern. We've defeated the West, the teams. So how do we have an advantage being in the East? Because we've beaten people in the West. Bottom line, she says, we've gotten the job done. We've done what we're supposed to do, and that's win in football. And then she went on to tell me about the championships that they have, and even when they didn't win, they lost a couple to Grambling State. But it'll be interesting to see how they will grow the conference. Ideally, to me, a perfect setup would be, and I say perfect, is 12 teams. And you just don't, how can I put it? You do your homework when you select a 12 team. And you may have universities that will approach you. You don't just necessarily have to go out and seek a 12 team. But if you do your homework. And it's on the academic side, what do they bring to the table? Also from a sports perspective, it's more than just football. Basketball, baseball, and all the other sports, albeit they don't make money, but they're part of the athletic programs. So it'll be interesting. Take a quick time out. Alvin Hollins, he'll join me next. You're listening to the Carlos Brown Show on the Open Mic Broadcast Network and Spreaker.com.
Hello. This is Alonzo Hardy Jr., the president of the SWAC Alumni Association. The SWAC Alumni Association is an organization founded on December 10, 1999, at the Sheraton Hotel in Birmingham, Alabama. Its mission is to serve as a rallying ground for individuals who have made the Southwestern Athletic Conference the illustrious conference that it is today. Its membership is open to former student athletes who played in the conference in any sport, as well as to coaches, athletic administrators, staff members, game officials, and fans. Annually, the association holds a Legends Awards and Roast Banquet or luncheon where it honors individuals with Lifetime Achievement Awards, a Chuck Prophet Wackenmaster Award, and occasionally a Distinguished Service Award. Proceeds from that event help to finance degree completion scholarships for student athletes who have exhausted their playing eligibility at SWAC universities, but who may still need an extra semester or two to complete their college studies. For more information on the SWAC Alumni Association or to get information on becoming a member, you can send correspondence to SWAC Alumni Association, 875 Miller Creek Lane, Newport News, Virginia, 23602. The email address is swacalumniassociation@yahoo.com.
Welcome back to this week's edition of the Carlos Brown Show, heard exclusively right here on the Open Mic Broadcast Network and Spreaker.com. Today's first guest of the show is Alvin Hollins, chair of the FAMU Sports Hall of Fame and FAMU Athletic Historian. Alvin, good morning to you, sir.
Good morning and welcome. I have to say good morning, Baton Rouge. I should say from Tallahassee. I just want to say good morning to my dad, Alvin Sr., the Sarge, and my three sisters, Gail, Pam, and Roz. I think between Houston and Baton Rouge, they're all listening in as well. So I know you guys are getting ready for Cristobal, I guess. We're going to get quite a bit of rain out of it on this side of the Gulf as well. So, we won't be unscathed, I don't think. We're going to get some flooding in this area too, believe it or not.
Yeah, well, Alvin, a native of Baton Rouge, and being in Tallahassee all these years, you never get used to it, but you kind of know how to prepare. At least you try to prepare for Mother Nature.
Yeah, but this time of year is, we call it hurricane season. So, this time of year is when you can expect stuff to come out of the Gulf. So, we just have to be prepared all the way until November. Yeah, but we're going to talk about the FAMU coming to the SWIZAC, as we used to say when I was in school.
I understand that, and the historian yourself, boy, when we spoke a couple of days ago, it was like, wow, it's been a long time coming. But now FAMU in the Southwestern Athletic Conference. Alvin, what was your initial emotions and perspective when you finally had it official? Because I'm sure you had got wind of what was going on even before a lot of people did.
Well, needless to say, I was very happy for the for Florida A&M and for the program because, I think when you look at Southern, Grambling, Jackson State, Alcorn, even Prairie View, back in the day, and these programs, when you look at the 8 historically black colleges, FAMU, Tennessee State, we all fit in that particular level of being a top flight program. So to be in with, some of these old rivals that we've had, we had this long standing relationship with Southern, and Grambling seemed like they were in the Orange Blossom Classic almost every other year. And we had some knockdown dragouts with Jackson State, not only in the Classic in the 60s, but of course we had that memorable playoff game in 78. And but these were you put FAMU in that with that group, you're talking about if we were doing a playoff like they do in the major colleges now, you probably have to fight. We'd probably be fighting for one of those 4 spots, because we're, you got Hall of Famers for college, pro football, great coaches, teams. So, Coach Cassim just recently passed away, and we had some real battles with him over the years at Alcorn. So I think it's going to be a wonderful marriage of traditions, and we can't forget about the bands now. That's part of the allure. That's part of the allure, especially when you're talking about television and you're talking about fans. That's our fans came out, like gangbusters to that Southern game last year in Tallahassee, and I think. And it had been years since we had played you guys in Tallahassee. And I think it was a referendum on these are the types of teams that we want to see. So I think the administration listened. They looked at the ratings from television for that game in particular. And basically we're a better fit for the SWAC, as far as our program and travel is going to be a lot easier on us because, Alabama State, Alabama A&M, they were old rivals of ours going back in the old SIAC. So, when you look at the makeup of the MEAC right now, there's only 2 schools in our conference that are within 5 or 6 hours drive time. Everything is 10 hours and more going up the eastern seaboard. But with the SWAC, you probably have at least half of the schools within 6-7 hours drive, including Baton Rouge. So it makes for a whole lot better situation as far as your fans traveling. We never had much problem even up in D.C. because we have huge alumni chapters all all everywhere, and I know Judge Janice Clark will be more than anxious to see the Rattlers come in there this year, hopefully in future years as well. But, we have quite a few alumni. I think Alumni Association indicated we have 16 alumni chapters in the SWAC footprint. So that means you'll be seeing plenty of orange and green at a lot of these games. And I think that's part of the, good deal too for this pairing, I suppose, because, you're going to get the fan support, which is so important because we never really got that with the MEAC. MEAC fans didn't travel well, but kind of tough coming from Delaware or Maryland down to Florida for a football game,
Yeah. Visiting with Alvin Highlands, chair of the FAMU Sports Hall of Fame, FAMU athletic historian. And Alvin, what has been some of the feedback that you've gotten about this move, just from fans or alums or people or your colleagues in the business? What has been their reaction?
Oh, the reaction has been very positive. In fact, when it's almost like, why did it take so long? Because I think one of the things that our fans looked at, and, when I got here in 1979, you talk to some of the old timers then, and they always talked about how FAMU fans, always look forward to the games against Southern and Grambling, SWAC teams, Tennessee State, simply because those were the programs that consistently would test FAMU. Let's face it, you're in the state of Florida back in the 40s, 50s, 60s, what black kids couldn't go to Florida State, that type of thing. So you had your pick of the litter. So your teams were dominant. And that kind of epitomized black college football prior to integration. You look at Alabama and Clemson and, the heavyweight battles that you see now. Now you take that back 50 years, that's black college football, because most of those kids are black. And most of those kids would have been at our schools. So that's the caliber of talent. That's the caliber of play. But our fans always look forward to those games because you got a chance to test yourself and see where you were. And I think about the games we've had more recently with Southern, especially in the mid-90s when we were going to the playoffs as an enlarged team. That Southern game always turned out to be critical for us making a case to the NCAA for a strong schedule. The Southern was almost always number one, with Pete Richardson number one in black college football, and always ranked in the top 25. So those types of matchups appeal to the fans. When we didn't, and outside of A&T and South Carolina State, we didn't have that same matchup. We didn't have those same matchups consistently in the MEAC. So I think our folks are just more than ready to go west.
Yeah, and I would think just last year's ball game, albeit a Southern alum, I'm disappointed in the outcome, but if you look at the pageantry, the crowd, FAMU, according to Mr. Gaucher, just the financial reward for playing that game, that was just like, okay, that's it. We have a chance to have these type of games, not only with Southern, but with other teams in the conference. So to your point, the fans they're going to be very excited. And Alvin, we're talking about football, but there's basketball and baseball, so it's just a good fit.
Right. Well, you looking, when you look at the SWAC, me being an alum as well, so I guess maybe I can kind of understand it a little bit too. Yeah. You look at basketball. Both of us, and you look at this league. A lot of our better we've got NBA players that have come out of the SWAC, Major League Baseball Hall of Famers that have come out of the SWAC, and of course track. It's unbelievable. The gold medal winners and things like that. So you look across the sports landscape. It's not, like you said, it's not just football, but certainly the football, the earning potential, the television ratings, can be big. I mean, because I think the SWAC is in a position now, and especially with the commissioners you guys have, to really create, a really solid network for broadcast, and having FAMU, with the ratings that we put up the last 2 years in the ESPN package that our conference has, I think that just made it a win-win, because now you bring that market share. So like you said, we bring our fans, not only the fans that are actually going to be in the stands, but you got fans that are watching you. I think the estimate was that we had 27,000 in the stadium for our game with Southern, but there were at least 28 or 29,000 viewers of the game. So that means you got, so that shows you, and our ratings throughout the year were far superior to everybody else in the MEAC. So it shows you the kind of Rattler Nation following that we'll be bringing to the SWAC come 2021.
Yeah, and we're talking about Southern and FAMU, but some chances to establish some new relationships and reestablish. What's been going on as far as we look in the conference football-wise. Alcorn State, football champions, doing very well in football. Has there been some good history that you could pick out right quick between FAMU and Alcorn State, even if it was back in the day?
Well, Alcorn, we haven't. Well, back in the day, I think actually Alcorn came in Ken Riley's senior year, which was 68, I think, and won the Orange Blossom Classic. I got pictures of, of Cassim, with the Orange Blossom Classic trophy. And then, of course, that great year they had, I think it was 84, when they went undefeated. We had the misfortune of playing Alcorn, and, they pretty much dominated us down in Tampa. But more than likely, we've had some games out there at Alcorn and some games here that have been really tight. In fact, we played them in Milwaukee in 1978. That was before my time. And I think 78. It was 78 or 77. But we managed to get by Cassim that year. But, these are heavyweight programs. So, and we think, and so that's what you look for, is those types of matchups, that are going to go down to the wire, fourth quarter. And of course, one of the things that makes this matchup, especially from a football standpoint, unique is the fact that Willie Simmons, our head coach, he was offensive coordinator at Alcorn when they made their rise back to the top. Yeah. And then he coached at Prairie View for 3 years. So he's very familiar with the SWAC. And I think it'll be an opportunity for him to get back in and match wits, with, some of the coaches out there. So, he's looking forward to it as well, because I think in the end, you want to basically go, not just because, and one thing about Coach Simmons, he understands the marketing side of it and things that will excite the fans. And this move definitely excites our fans. We have in the MEAC, we have a MEAC fan zone page. And once that announcement was made, it went from one page to 12 pages in about 3 hours. And I'm going, anything to do with FAMU usually gets quite a bit of play anyway. But there must have been 7 or 8 different topic lines surrounding FAMU going to the SWAC and what's going to happen to the MEAC, and that's part of the drama too, is what's going to happen to the league, after we leave. So,
and Alvin, that was going to be my next point to cover with you, get your perspective on that. Some I've talked to, they think that the MEAC will survive with some major adjustments. What do you think, Alvin? Will we one day look back and say, "Wow, the MEAC is no more," or is that just maybe just speculation that's not warranted right now?
Well, I mean, needless to say, when you lose 2 top 20 teams in 1 year, I mean, North Carolina A&T, they won the Celebration Bowl, I think, 4 times in the last 5 years, and losing them, that was an eye opener for everybody, because we were like, why are they leaving? By the way, this is going to be the 50th year of the MEAC. It was founded in 1970. So to lose one of your founding members, and you're arguably, you lose an A&T, and then now you're losing FAMU in that 50th year. That's quite a swan song for a conference. But I think the league can survive, but it just depends on whether or not the remaining 8 schools decide to stick together, because there's been a lot of talk about the Big South Conference I guess it was a predominantly white conference until Hampton joined, and now the A&T is on its way. Now, it's a conference that's based in Virginia and North Carolina. I think they got a couple teams in South Carolina. So it's for teams that are looking to cut down travel costs and stay kind of within your own footprint. That's more convenient for some teams. And I think, the worry is that now that A&T is leaving, North Carolina Central may opt to go that way. And if they do, Norfolk State may opt to go that way and rejoin with Hampton. They're only about 15 miles apart. So as it is, so it would make a lot of sense for them to get back in the same league if possible. Now, and of course, there's always been speculation about Howard going to the Patriot League. I think there's women's soccer teams in the SWAC,
Yeah.
And then North Carolina, Delaware State has had pretty much been flirting with the Northeast Conference for about the last 10 years. So I can only imagine now that you're starting to lose some of your heavyweights, that some of the folks, that are kind of on the fringe may start thinking, well, hey, maybe this is the time, to leave. So, so I think the next 2 to 3 years will be critical as far as the survival of the MEAC, because the only option you really have would be to merge with the SWAC, or possibly, invite some, predominantly white schools to join, even if it's just for football, or try to get some Division II schools from the CIAA to move up. But that $1 million price tag to move up Division II, Division I is tough, and I just don't. And Winston-Salem was actually in the league, but they just didn't think they could cut it financially. And the irony is that the president who made the decision to go back to Division II at Winston-Salem is now the president at North Carolina A&T. So, but A&T was in a much better financial position than Winston. So, but I don't know. I think, and I've always felt, especially the last 15, 20 years, that finances would ultimately dictate whether we even keep athletics at our institution because the school needs to survive. You know, of course, athletics means a lot for your social life and the identity, but that's something that the schools are going to have to determine as far as their mission moving forward, whether you can afford to keep athletics. Maybe dropping down to Division II where you can reduce the number of sports and some expenses might be the ultimate option because being in Division, I mean, you think about where the SWAC is, you know, you're not going to the playoffs. So, you know, you start looking at carrying extra sports that don't generate any dollars. You know, maybe this marriage will help that in some ways, generating more money from broadcasting and sponsorships. But, you know, I don't know. But that's something in the next few years we're all going to have to look at, especially with, you know, with the things that are going on with the social, the riots and everything. And it's just amazing how in a space of 3 or 4 months, this country has been turned completely upside down. And the virus situation is going to have an impact this year across the board.
Yeah.
You know, because I saw where Alabama had 3 guys test positive, along with Oklahoma State. So, you know, so that's, I don't know. I mean, it's going to, and that's just athletes coming in early. So, you know, what's going to happen when you bring your student body back? You know, so a lot of
regions.
Right. So it's a lot of questions to answer, and it's going to take time to figure all that out. But
time and leadership, you're really going to find out who can really operate when there are tough times. And it's interesting because we got a few minutes left. You mentioned, I thought I heard you mention in a way about maybe the MEAC and the SWAC merging, at least some of them. Yeah. And, you know, this talk has taken off again about a black super conference, you know,
right?
Your Division I and everything except football. And it's going to be interesting. I'm going to ask the commissioner about that next week because you're hearing that as a possible situation that could happen, or at least thinking about it. That may be their goal.
Well, you know, when you look at some of the schools, we were talking about Howard maybe going to Patriot League, that kind of thing. Every school, you know, it seems like every school in the league, our league anyway, MEAC, has been associated with something, you know, some other alternative reality, I guess. You know, Bethune-Cookman seems to be almost in no man's land because of their geography. The geography really works against even FAMU in terms of other conferences. That means that you'd have to see basically outside of HBCU conferences, you know, our only options really would have been going independent or, at least in football anyway, or going, you know, to a predominantly white conference, you know, and some fans just don't like the idea. I mean, they love the idea of seeing Alabama State, Southern, Grambling coming in to brag, but to see Charleston Southern and Appalachian State just doesn't really, you know, just doesn't really float their boat. So that's the thing you have to worry about in terms of conference affiliation. Is it going to make you money? Is it going to benefit you? You know, so that's why when you look at South Carolina State, for example, which has had some financial issues, their enrollment's down to about 2,500 now, but they say they're on their way back up. You know, the Big South seems like it would be a better fit for them because there was some talk that they were interested in going to the SWAC or the SWAC was interested in them, because I know the SWAC is probably wanting to have a 12-team setup at least so they can go to divisions. I mean, really divide the league up, you know, for competition. But Tennessee State supposedly was the ideal partner with FAMU, but I don't know if that ship has sailed or not. So the super conference idea was something we've always talked about, taking the strongest from both leagues and forming that super conference. But with A&T and Hampton having already left, I don't know whether they would be tempted to join that super conference if we ever announced that that's what we were going to do in 3 years or something. So,
yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how all of this works out. Dr. McClellan, the commissioner of the Southwestern Athletic Conference, it's going to be interesting to see how he, loans out his leadership on this. But with FAMU, it's a no-brainer. It's a good fit. Had a chance to hear FAMU's National Alumni Association President, Mr. Greg Clark, talking about their excitement, and matter of fact, they're looking to have all the alumni of the SWAC, the directors and alumni, kind of get together and put their heads together to try to help out the institution. So it's a win-win, Alvin, as far as FAMU and Southern. Your closing comments about the situation, and how is it going to feel for you to, kind of get a chance to come back home maybe a little bit more often?
Well, I mean, coming back home more often is always a good thing. But certainly I think, you look forward to coming back on the campus to see Southern. I mean, in my years when I was, I guess, as an undergrad, I really enjoyed the trips throughout the league, seeing different places, especially Jackson, had some battles with them, baseball, basketball, football, and of course, Grambling. So there's a lot of memories, and we had some pretty good memories after I got here, because we played SWAC teams quite a bit, in all sports. I think we played Jackson State and Alcorn, Southern too, and baseball this past year. We didn't get the chance to play Alcorn because the virus canceled that. But that should be interesting too, because the baseball coach at Alcorn is a FAMU grad. So yeah, in his third or fourth year, Brett Richardson. So it's interesting that with the chance to rekindle some of these relationships and just talk more about the history, because the history between FAMU and the SWAC is very, very rich. And, I look forward to, as they say, renewing all of those ties.
Yeah. So let the gamemanship begin,
right?
And it should be interesting. The pageantry, the marching bands, the tailgating, when, if I could put it this way, post-pandemic, it should be great. But Alvin, appreciate the time as always. You enjoy the rest of your weekend. You stay safe and be safe, and God bless.
All right. Same to you, sir. All right.
All right. Goodbye. That was Alvin Hollins. Wow. Just always a pleasure to talk with Alvin Hollins, now the FAMU Sports Hall of Fame chair and FAMU athletic historian. So we thank him for the time. We'll take a quick break. When I come back, it'll be Brandon B.J. Jones of HBCU Game Day. Get his perspective on FAMU, now officially in the Southwestern Athletic Conference. You're listening to the Carlos Brown Show on the Open Mic Broadcast Network and Spreaker.com.
As a dad, you'll spend years teaching your son how to hit a baseball, how to throw a tight spiral and hit a receiver, how to spring off a diving board and hit the water, how to hit a 1-wood and a 9-iron. how to hit the bullseye, how to hit the strike zone, hit a jump shot, hit the open man, hit the hockey net, and maybe the most challenging of all, how to hit the books. But the question is this: how much time will you spend teaching him what not to hit? Teach your son early and often that all violence against women is wrong. For tips on what to say, visit endabuse.org. Brought to you by the Family Violence Prevention Fund, the Waite Institute for Violence Prevention, the Ad Council, and this station.
Hello, this is Alonzo Hardy Jr., the president of the SWAC Alumni.
The birth of legends are storied in this conference. We must never forget our rich history. We now turn our gaze to the future. The new legends will emerge. New heroes to arise. The Southwestern Athletic Conference. Be our history.
Welcome back to this week's edition of the Carlos Brown Show, heard exclusively right here on the Open Mic Broadcast Network and Spreaker.com. Brandon B.J. Jones of HBCU Game Day. Brandon, good morning to you, sir.
Man, good morning, Carlos. How's it going?
It's going. It has been a very emotional week, and having you on to talk about the big news, the very big news, FAMU. Officially in the Southwestern Athletic Conference. Just kind of get your perspective on it, and when it's finally done, your perspective.
Man, I am excited. I mean, we talk about, and there's always been ideas. What if FAMU was in the SWAC? What if FAMU, was in the SWAC? But now that it's happened, and just to see it, man, it was a boom. And I think with everything going on in society right now, what's going on in our country, I think this is something that made a lot of people who follow our conference, especially the teams in our conference who have a history with FAMU, this made us smile. All right. Even if it was just for 5, 10, 15, 20 minutes, this made us smile. This was one of those things like, okay, here we go. So I am very excited to see FAMU in the conference, because now we know that FAMU Southern rivalry is back on. And if you were in Tallahassee last year when Southern came to town, everyone left that game saying the same thing. It didn't matter if they were from Southern, it didn't matter if they were from FAMU, or the people from various different HBCUs that decided to show up. It was like, man, this is something that needs to happen annually. And to get the opportunity for that to happen, man, I'm excited. And, it brings FAMU Grambling back into the fold. It brings back FAMU and Alabama State back in the fold, FAMU and Alabama A&M, FAMU Alcorn. So, man, this is, like I said, this is something that made me smile, and you can feel the buzz across the conference.
Yeah, the conference, I'm sure if you have some social media information, you can see the other conferences, the fans of conferences in the FCS and football, they're talking about it. A chance for FAMU to establish some new relationships, with going out to Texas, Prairie, Texas Southern. So a win-win, in my opinion, BJ.
Oh, I agree. I mean, listened to showed the other day, and the FAMU alumni president was just like, hey, we have these big alumni bases in Texas, Dallas, Houston, San Antonio, and Austin. They're really pumped about getting the opportunity to see FAMU, out there, out in the great state of Texas. It's also going to open up some recruiting grounds for FAMU out in Texas and into Louisiana. They've already been getting kids out of Alabama for years, but this kind of opens up Mississippi. So it's going to be, I think it's a win-win for both the conference and FAMU.
And BJ, you've seen them personally in the last few years. On the football perspective, their philosophy, what they run on offense, how will they fit into the conference? Is it something that we've seen in the conference already? Is there a team that's kind of similar to FAMU as far as how they run their offense and their style of play? Football.
They remind you a lot of Alcorn. Ryan Stanley. Imagine Alcorn this year with Felix Harper. That's what you had with Ryan Stanley for the last couple of years. You had a quarterback that was capable of pushing the ball down the field. A quarterback that left FAMU, school's all-time leading passer. But you would look at his attempts. They didn't ask Ryan Stanley to throw the ball 50 times a game or 40 times a game or sometimes not even 30 times a game. They had a stable of running backs that they would hand the ball off to, and even had a receiver, Azende Ray, who was versatile. They can line up in the slot, line up at running back, line up at the Wildcat, and they would run the ball a lot. Defensively, FAMU has improved tremendously from what they were since before Willie Simmons had gotten there. So what you have is you got those Florida athletes now. You got those Florida athletes, and you have Willie Simmons. They remind you a lot of an Alcorn. They are a physical team, just like MEAC teams are. They are very physical on both sides of the ball. They're not the FAMU that, if you remember FAMU in the 90s, that just chucked the ball around and it was basketball on grass. They like to get up in between the tackles and pound you a little bit.
Interesting, boy. So their value they bring as from a football perspective. Baseball, a good program. I think they will really be competitive. Basketball, BJ, they're trying to turn the corner on the men's side, and then they've just hired a new women's basketball coach. So once again, a good fit, and we'll just have to see how everything plays out on the competitive side. But a question to you: how quickly you think they challenge for a championship? Within 2 years, when they officially start playing, and everything is settled as far as how they're going to, if they're going to be divisionals, or, whether a 12 team comes in or not. FAMU, in your opinion, they will challenge right away?
They compete day one. If you look at the way that Willie Simmons and their staff is recruiting, you look at the amount of talent on that roster right now that's early. That are sophomores going into their junior seasons this year. They're going to compete immediately. It's not going to be an incubation period where they're going to get adjusted. Day one, when FAMU football hits the SWAC, they're going to be competing immediately. You talked about a player like Marquise Bell. You're talking about I can't forget the young man at receiver who was a walk-on, who was an All-American last year as a sophomore. You just talk about some of that talent that they have there. The quarterbacks that they pick up from Kansas State, transfer. He's a young player. I mean, FAMU had the number one recruiting class in black college football last year. They're bringing that. They're recruiting at a high level already. And I think that them coming to the SWAC is only going to improve that recruiting level, because now you get to tell kids in Florida, hey, instead of us going to Dover, Delaware, or going to Greensboro, North Carolina, going to Washington, D.C., or going to Norfolk, Virginia, we could go 3 hours to Montgomery. We could go 5 hours to Alabama A&M, 6-hour trip to Jackson, Mississippi. And we get to have those teams on our campus. And I'm sorry, no disrespect to the MEAC, Norfolk ain't traveling to Tallahassee like Jackson State does. Howard isn't traveling to Tallahassee like Southern does. South Carolina State, even though they did have a rivalry with FAMU, they're not going to travel to Tallahassee like Alabama State is. So now you get to have, more packed houses. That's only going to incentivize all those Florida kids to stay at home and go to FAMU.
Well, on that note, very, very interesting points that you're making, and I happen to agree with them. BJ, let's see if we can finish this conversation or have another conversation about the impact of FAMU on the conference next week. We have nothing but time until football season starts. But appreciate the time as always, and stay safe, man. Stay safe.
Oh, man, you do the same, man. I appreciate you having me. And like I said, man, anytime I'm on these airways with you, man, it's a good feeling because I know we're close. Yeah,
and next time we'll get a chance to maybe talk some strategy with everybody's favorite coach, Dawson Odoms.
Oh, man.
Dawson Odoms, yeah. There's a lot of pressure on everybody now. You have to up your game. Second place just won't do.
No.
Appreciate it, BJ.
All right, thank you. Thank you, caller.
All right. That was Brandon B.J. Jones of HBCU Game Day. Take a quick time out. When I come back, he is the man. Vice President, Director of Athletics at FAMU, Courtney Gaucher, joins me next. You're listening to the Carlos Brown Show on the Open Mic Broadcast Network.
I present to you 3 of the fiercest subjects ever assembled in the cage of doom. First, the brain-wrenching behemoth, Algebra 2, weighing in at a mind-boggling 800 pounds. Foreign languages! The multilingual international sensation capable of tossing you clear across the Atlantic. And finally, biology. More ferocious than formaldehyde, she'll dissect you 1 chromosome at a time. Who among you will step up to their challenge?
Yeah, I'll do it. Me too. I'm in. Sign me up.
Take on the tough classes now. You need them to prepare for college. Find out which classes you need at knowhowtogo.org.
Brought to you by the American Council on Education, Lumina Foundation for Education, and the Ad Council.
It's the Open Mic Tele-Network line. Dial 720-721-1558, and instantly at your fingertips, you'll have the latest local news, weather, and sports. Need a word of encouragement? Dial 720-721-1558. The Open Mic Tele-Network line features weekly prayer, verse of the week, and local ministries at your fingertips. Everything you need on demand. Dial 720-721-1558. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. No internet? No problem. No Wi-Fi? No problem. No app? No problem. All you need to do is dial 720-721-1558 to listen now.
Welcome back to this week's edition of the Carlos Brown Show, heard exclusively right here on the Open Mic Broadcast Network and Spreaker.com. Hour number 2. A native of Birmingham, Alabama, Courtney Gaucher became the Vice President, Director of Athletics at FAMU in December 2019. He has hit the ground running from its expertise and as a director of athletics, also very savvy with social media, and also a little trash talking. I love it. Courtney, good morning to you, sir.
Good morning. Good morning.
Welcome for the first time to the Carlos Brown Show.
No doubt. Glad to be here.
Well, we're glad to have you in. Congratulations on FAMU becoming a member of the Southwestern Athletic Conference. Courtney, kind of give us a kind of the process or a slight timeline about joining the conference from the FAMU's perspective.
Yeah, well, I'll say, I was hired on in December, and at that point, we had a lot of things that were really on our plate. We had financial issues, we had NCAA issues, we had a lot of things that we had to work through, and so we started to study, how we were spending money, where our money was going, what was, how our teams were moving, et cetera, et cetera. And the reality of that study is, our travel expenses were killing us. And, we weren't really getting much return on our investment for the exorbitant travel. And, the teams that were coming in to play football for us, they weren't really moving our gate receipts. And so, we started to take a deeper dive and, we socialized the idea of what conferences would be a good fit for us, who might be interested, and when we might be interested in making a move if we were going to do that. And, so through a lot of conversation and some closed door meetings, we were able to really land with the Southwestern Athletic Conference. And we firmly believe it's in the best interest of our institution, to be in line with some of the HBCU football blue bloods, and somebody said the other day, man, this is the equivalency of a black SEC. And I said, yep, you are exactly right.
Yeah. The blue bloods, black college football institutions, even from an academic spot, and also the support of your board of trustees and your national alumni president, they were all on board with the decision to come in the Southwestern Athletic Conference, correct?
Absolutely.
Well, 30% cut on your expenses. Money matters. Relationships. And from a historical standpoint, FAMU's had tremendous relationships with members of the Southwestern Athletic Conference. Speak on that from a historical standpoint.
Yeah, I think it's, FAMU and our rich tradition of and I'll talk football, but across all of our sports, really, that rich tradition of excellence. And, you talk about, some of the Hall of Fame and professional athletes and, and then just the people in the industry, Pam Oliver, who's a sports commentator, she ran track at FAMU, and the list goes on and on and on. And I think for us to align with some other perennial historical brands such as Southern, Jackson State, Alabama State, you can go back and just look at the storied history of these rivalries, and really the opportunity to, for both institutions or any institutions involved to really, celebrate Black college athletics at the highest levels. The fanfare, the pageantry that goes with it, the storied history of the Marching 100, and you lay that down across the, the parallels of bands, and I told somebody from Southern the other day, I said, yeah, the Marching 100 is often imitated, but never duplicated. So don't forget that.
Hey, Courtney, wait a minute. That's a familiar saying that I've heard. I'll say it again. Often imitated, but never duplicated.
Oh yeah.
Well, now the late great Dr. Isaac Griggs was. Now he would say that as well about the human jukebox. But to your point, the pageantry, bands, cheerleaders. I got a chance to visit Tallahassee years ago, but just the atmosphere on campus, if I didn't know any better, I thought I was in Baton Rouge. but I was in Tallahassee, so much respect. And I think it was a homecoming for FAMU, that particular game.
Absolutely.
So when you look at it, and speaking of games and rivalries, you cited just the atmosphere with Southern coming to Bragg Memorial last year, and according to the article, generated $285,000 just for that game, and that's not taking into account the people that were watching on ESPN3 or ESPN television streaming.
Absolutely. And that was one of the other measures. It was a little bit of a sampling, but imagine that type of energy. I mean, the atmosphere was electric. I mean, I was talking to the AD at Florida State, and he remembers that night because, number one, we probably had more fans in our stadium than they did, but they heard our stadium. And, that was, that's special. And so if you can capture that type of revenue generation, that type of energy and excitement week in, week out, I mean, it's a no-brainer. And, and no slight on the MEAC. I'll say this. The MEAC has afforded a lot of historical Black colleges and universities an opportunity to play Division I athletics that we may not have had. And, Dr. Commissioner Thomas, has been, first class in this process, and he understands it. The landscape of intercollegiate athletic changes. And so this decision was bittersweet, but obviously it puts FAMU in a position to be successful long after Courtney Gaucher. But again, I think that this is a great move. Commissioner Charles McClellan was phenomenal. I mean, just his progressiveness, his thought process and vision for the Southwestern Athletic Conference. And I'll steal his words: there was no other place for FAMU other than the Southwestern Athletic Conference.
No other places. No other place but the Southwestern Athletic Conference. Courtney, was there any time that other considerations were had by FAMU?
Yeah, absolutely. We had a couple of options. I joke about it, and we brag different here, but we had options. It was important for me and my president that we made sure we stayed true to the mission of our institution. And the more we looked at it, money matters. We think that we have an opportunity to really change the game and elevate Black college athletics. And so some of those other options were outside of HBCU conferences. And, when we got to the nitty gritty, it just made sense. The geographical footprint, staying true to our mission. We had a perennial brand, and we knew, and we knew wherever we landed, it was going to be a feather in whoever's conference, a feather in their hat. And, it was important for us to maintain an opportunity to stay connected with our peers, and those who serve our populations. And so, again, as you kind of get into the nitty gritty, it was pretty clear where we needed to be.
Visiting with Courtney Gaucher, Vice President and Director of Athletics at FAMU. We appreciate his time. First time on the Coles Brown Show. And potential. That's a good word. Potential economic gains, besides what you've just talked about so far. A potential of hosting a SWAC championship game. Mm-hmm. That's very lucrative. Here's a scenario. Let's say Alcorn State or Grambling comes to brag during the regular conference season. That's a win-win. Mm-hmm. And then the way it lines up, you get a chance to host a SWAC championship game. And let's say if it's a rematch, or say it's Alcorn and Southern, another windfall. Mm-hmm. That's potential. Plus the strong brand of FAMU.
Absolutely.
That's an outstanding scenario.
No doubt. And again, that's really what it's all about. We see it across the country, and other conferences have been able to figure that out and monetize it and generate revenue and enhance their enterprises. It's about time we do the same thing. And I'm fired up. A lot of the SWAC athletic directors have reached out and have thrown full support behind us. And to be honest with you, we were playing a lot of non-conference games, in all sports with a lot of our SWAC peers. And, so again, it was good to kind of formalize this and say, hey, let's take it to the next level. Let's really do this thing. And it's really time to change the game.
You were speaking about competition between, FAMU as far as with members in the Southwest Athletic Conference. If we look at the football program, we would be all in agreement and good shape, good program. Basketball, you just hired a women's basketball coach. On the men's side, you're trying to turn the corner. And baseball, from outside looking in, no championship not too long ago. Baseball, very solid program.
Absolutely. 2019 MEAC champions. So when, I'll talk a little bit about baseball. I mean, again, you think about the baseball pedigree of the SWAC. I mean, Jackson State, Texas Southern. These are perennial names, and so you're gonna have to pack your lunch every week. There's no cupcakes, but that's in any sport. I definitely think our basketball programs under the leadership of our two head coaches will fit right in. I think they're going to help enhance the game, and beyond the football surface, I think again playing in some great cities against perennial rivalries week in, week out. I think people are going to want to come to basketball games now. It's the brands, it's the opportunities to travel to some of these other historically black college and university campuses that, quite frankly, we didn't necessarily always have the opportunity to do. And, so we're looking at it across the board. Matter of fact, I was even texting my bowling coach today. I mean, she's fired up about the opportunity, because there's some recruiting bad blood between FAMU and Southern. I think we stole a couple of bowling recruits, and so I tell you,
bring it, Courtney, bring it.
So we are ready to take the Southwestern Athletic Conference by storm, and to really do this thing and celebrate it in a grand way.
You mentioned they've reached out, some of the ADs in the Southwestern Athletic Conference. How much of a relationship you had before this big announcement with some of the ADs in the conference?
Well, I think for me, for a lot of them, I've had some great relationships long term, even before I came to FAMU. I'm the youngest Division I athletic director in the country. And, when I had the opportunity, was afforded the opportunity here at FAMU, numerous of my friends and colleagues in the industry, Jen at Alabama State, Brian Hicks at Alabama A&M, long-time friends of mine, Ashton at Jackson State, and Derek Horn, who was a former athletic director here at FAMU. All good friends of mine and industry colleagues that I've had relationships with for a long time. And so, there were definitely some opportunities where, I could pick their brain on hey, hypothetically, if this happened, or how is the SWAC? What are some things that are good about it? X, Y, and Z. And so we were able to kind of get a lot of information just because of those relationships. And so the transition next year is going to be seamless. Again, they've already, reached out with helping hands, and I'd be totally remiss, the athletic directors in the MEAC, again, very supportive. Dr. Ingrid McCree, Dr. Ed Scott at Morgan State, very good friends, and then the dean of HBCU athletic directors, Dr. Lynn Thompson, and at Bethune. And so, again, I mentioned it was bittersweet, but we're really looking forward to the future.
Let me ask you a pointed question. The Mid-Eastern Athletic Conference, there's some concerns that how will they survive this, or will they be viable after, losing some of their staunch members?
Mm-hmm.
Do you believe that they will make the adjustment and continue on?
Yes. I'll say this. The Mid-Eastern Athletic Conference is a lot stronger than people give it credit for. Dr. Dennis Thomas has positioned the conference to be, valuable for some. And again, I'll say this. If geography was not an issue for FAMU, we wouldn't have left the MEAC. I just think that, we had to do something a little different, but they've got strong membership. I mean, you've got Howard, you've got Delaware State, you've got Morgan, you have some really good brands still associated, North Carolina Central. but soon. And so you've really got to look at their opportunities. And again, I do think that there is a desire for expansion in the MEAC, timing and all those things. But I certainly think that they will be around, and we certainly need them to be around because, even though FAMU had to make a move, it wasn't, we're hopeful that obviously the conference can still sustain its prestige and traditions because, it's afforded opportunities for other institutions like us.
Visiting with Courtney Gosey, Vice President and Director of Athletics at FAMU. If you just tuned in, we were just discussing from my question about the MEAC and its existence going forward. A situation where they're going to have to make an adjustment is what I'm hearing, and hopefully continue best for the Mid-Eastern Athletic Conference. Your relationship with Dr. McClellan, the Commissioner of the Southwestern Athletic Conference, I'm sure that, when you reached out to him for information, you were surprised maybe, but you appreciate the working relationship you guys have established.
Absolutely. And, in all transparency, I had met Charles briefly, a couple of times, a couple of years ago. And, we'd always kind of been, about 12 degrees of separation from each other. And really, didn't reach out to him until recently, maybe a couple of weeks ago. Because this thing, as we studied it and as we got the information that we really needed, it really became clear, I would say maybe a month ago. And so strategically said, okay, well, let's look at the timing. Is the timing good now? Is the timing good in a year? X, Y, and Z. And so with some of the challenges that we're going to be faced on the other side of COVID-19, we thought that we wanted to make sure we put our program in a position to rebound as quickly as possible, and that the timing was now. And he, was phenomenal. We didn't get each other excited. We talked and said, okay, what if? What if this happened and could this work? Are you guys interested? They weren't really looking to expand. And, so we had to work out, some kinks and have some conversations. And ultimately, with alignment from our board of trustees, our national alumni, and FAMU and the SWAC, it was a no-brainer.
Courtney, do you believe that this expansion with the Southwestern Athletic Conference, it won't stop with FAMU? There's conversation about adding a 12th member. How do you see that going for the Southwestern Athletic Conference?
I think it's going to be strategic. Again, as Charles told us, when we, approached them, is that the SWAC's not really interested in expansion. Now, depending on who it is and if it works in the footprint and if it makes sense strategically to grow the brand of the conference, then I think the membership will be open to solidifying a 12th member. But I think it's a matter of timing. I think, COVID-19 has required a lot of athletic directors to really look at what's supported and what's not. And I think the student athlete experience is the very most important thing that we have to look at. It was very upsetting for me to when I got here, having to make decisions about putting our baseball team on a bus to drive 17 hours one way to Dover, Delaware, play a game, and then drive 17 hours back and expect these kids to go to class. That's not practical, okay? But it's also not affordable for us to put a team of 40 kids on flights from Tallahassee to Dover, Delaware, and flights back. It's cost prohibitive. And so, that's really the crux of this decision as well, is, we were able to cut our travel time in half. And that's more time kids can spend in the classroom. less time on the road, and making sure that student athlete experience is second to none. And so, whomever or if the time comes for expansion, I think that whatever institution it is, they've got to look at what their student athlete experience is going to be. And we've got options to make 11 members work. But again, I think it definitely makes it a little bit easier and a little bit of a struggle conference if it's at 12 members.
Yeah, because I heard Dr. McCullough talking about that very thing, is that hopefully, and I'll paraphrase, institutions will seek us out. And he did, basically confirm that the conference wasn't seeking out anybody. But if the opportunity presents itself, you got to see if it's a fit geographically, academically, and culturally. It's going to be very interesting how all of this plays out. And for the purpose of this interview, I was looking at an article with Southern's Director of Athletic, Coach Roman Banks.
Mm-hmm.
And he was talking about the long-term deal with FAMU. Now, lo and behold, a member of the conference. I think now it just makes it easier to have two programs competing, not only in football but other sports. The relationship with Southern, along with the rest of the conference members, but with Southern especially, it's a long rivalry. And it's good to have it, coming back on a permanent basis, Courtney.
Absolutely. And it's to your point, the business model associated with that. I mean, it's almost that every week in the conference now we can have a classic.
Yeah.
And those games are going to be that sought after from a ticketing perspective. I mean, again, you can mark your calendars, folks. This ain't going to happen just once a year now. It's week in and week out. And, you look at all these other conferences. That's what makes the SEC special. Hey, week in, week out, you got perennial matchups that people want to come and see. And so for Black College athletics, why can't we do the same thing?
Yeah.
And I do believe we have that now.
Well, Courtney, you'll get really involved in social media savvy. Some would call it trash talking between, and you will be able to tell very quickly who are some of the institutions, their fans and alum, that like to get down in that way.
Oh yeah.
And when I talk to you maybe 2 years, if before then, you will be able to tell me which institution fans are just they're rabid.
Well, I'll tell you this, the Rattlers like to strike and strike again, but
I knew that was coming. Yeah,
even on a personal note. So my mother actually lives in Baton Rouge, and my aunt attended Southern University.
Oh man!
And they have started the trash talking already. I said, all right, now wait a minute now. Wait a minute now. But we're excited to get down in the SWAC country this year. Should we be afforded the opportunity to play, and we'll take it easy on the Jaguars when we get down there to Baton Rouge, and we'll show them how to play a little football and what a real Muncher band looks like.
Thank you, Courtney, for taking it easy. I'm still, besides the Alcorn game, that game, 97 yards to win it. Unbelievable. It's not how you start, but how you finish.
No doubt.
So I've got a chance to witness many high-scoring games, some epic games, and as Dwayne Johnson would say, just bring it.
Just bring it. That's it.
Yeah. Well, appreciate the time. First time on the show. Won't be the last time. You have a great weekend. Continue to be safe, and we'll talk again real soon.
Carlos, I appreciate it, and we're looking forward to catching up soon.
All right. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
That was Courtney Gaucher, Vice President and AD of Florida A&M University. They're confident. They're coming to the Southwestern Athletic Conference. They're officially in. and it's going to be popping, literally. And, you know, I've joked over the years about the orange and green, those colors. You won't forget them. You won't forget them. So it'll be interesting to see in baseball and basketball and A&M reestablishing some relationships. Alcorn fans, they're already, you know, in football on top. They're looking to stay on top. But now the competition has gotten even more. After this pandemic is over with, in 3 or 4 years from now, hopefully it's going to be better for everyone involved. I'm going to take a time out. When I come back, Charles Edmond of the Alcorn State Radio Network will join me, and then I'll kind of give you some messages that I've gotten in the last 30 minutes. I'll be able to read and incorporate some of those into the show. You're listening to the Carlos Brown Show on the Open Mic Broadcast Network and Spreaker.com.
Chris, can you put the video game controller down for a second?
I can talk and play. Oh, I'm totally annihilating this punk kid in Nebraska.
I just feel like you're not acting like a grown-up in our relationship.
Am too.
Well, you know, you still ride your skateboard to work, there's the comic book collection, the race car bed.
Look, I'm young at heart, but I put money into my 401k every paycheck. I picked up a few savings tips at feedthepig.org. I have control of my financial life now, and that feels pretty grown up.
Put away a few bucks, feel like $1 million. Putting some money from every paycheck into a savings account or contributing to your 401k can make a big difference later. For free ideas and easy tips on ways to save, go to feedthepig.org. That's feedthepig.org.
So, I bet I look like a grown-up to you now.
Well, except for the footy pajamas, I'd have to agree.
This message brought to you by the American Institute of Certified Public Accountants and the Ad Council.
Be the one with courage to fight child abuse.
All Texans must find the courage to fight child abuse.
Learn the signs and symptoms and report suspected abuse to appropriate authorities.
Learn and know these warning signs.
A child who undergoes changes in behavior, appetite, or routine. Watch for unexplained injuries, a change in academic performance, or loss of interest by a child in regular activities.
Trust your instincts. If you suspect something, do something.
If you believe a child is in an abusive situation, please call the Texas Abuse Hotline at 1-800-252-5400.
Be the one with courage. To find your local Children's Advocacy Center, visit onewithcourage.org.
On behalf of children, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome back to this week's edition of the Carlos Brown Show, heard exclusively right here on the Open Mic Broadcast Network and Spreaker.com. I want to thank Courtney Gaucher, Vice President and Director of Athletics at FAMU, for joining me. Now, Charles Edmond of the Alcorn State Radio Network. Charles, good morning to you.
Hey, Carlos. Good morning. How you doing?
I'm doing fine. How about yourself?
Doing better, feeling better. We'll just try to take it one day at a time and just try to figure out what's going on around here. We got weather to deal with. We're going to have some rain and some all that other stuff amongst the other stuff that we got to deal with.
Yep, 2020 has been very eventful, to say the least.
Can we move on to 2021?
You know, I said 2021, even for sports. Coming back would be better in my opinion, but you know, I understand I'm in the minority. I understand that people have told me in so many terms, football's too big to fail. And we've got to have it. So it is what it is. But speaking of it, football, FAMU, athletic program, they're coming to the Southwestern Athletic Conference. and it's just a perfect fit. You know, like to use the term perfect or the word perfect all the time, but it's a very good fit.
You very rarely use the phrase win-win, and when you think about win-win in situations where you actually mean it, you know, when you say win-win, somebody's losing. And so in this case, I think it's a win for Florida A&M. It's a win for the Southwestern Athletic Conference. It's a win for the fans. It's a win if you love rivalries, and I think it's clearly going to be some big-time rivalries with Florida A&M and Southern and Alcorn and Jackson. And Willie Simmons back in the conference. He's doing a good job over there. He knows his league. He started his SWAC tenure at Alcorn as offensive coordinator, so he knows the SWAC well. And I hope they get over the APR issues, and hopefully by the time they join the conference, which will be next year, hopefully they'll get beyond the APR stuff and bring them on, and let's see what happens. I'm looking forward to it.
Well, I'm already hearing. I was wondering how long it would be before I hear the term smoke. Yeah. Well, you know what? There's going to be some smoke. There's going to be some outstanding play on the gridiron, on the basketball court. Talking to Mr. Gaucher, they're hitting the ground running from a competitive standpoint. They're ready. So whether they'll be in the East or the West, we don't know. Well, they probably won't be in the West. Dr. Prince had an opinion that dissolve the East and West and, just take the two best teams, for us football-wise. It's still a lot to see what will happen, Charles. Baseball, they have divisions. Will there be a 12th team? Mr. Gaucher said that the SWAC wasn't seeking FAMU. FAMU reached out to the Southwestern Athletic Conference. So adding a 12th team, and there's a lot of discussion on social media about it. Dr. McClellan may not be inclined just to seek out somebody. Somebody may step to the Southwestern Athletic Conference about coming in. How would you feel about a non-HBCU if they came and asked about coming in the conference? There's just so many pieces to the puzzle.
Right. I wouldn't have an issue with that. I mean, if there's an interest between that team and the Southwestern Athletic Conference and they meet all the parameters, I won't have an issue with it at all. I do think a 12th team will be needed eventually. I do understand the concept if you don't. For the time being, the top two teams, you get rid of the East and West, and number 1 and number 2 meet for the SWAC football championship. I get that concept. So there's a lot of moving pieces with that. But in terms of a 12th team, you just have to look at what's out there. There are some teams, everybody talks about Tennessee State. Some people talk about Tuskegee. You have to remember, you have to have a certain number of sports. And the commissioner has said he's going to really put a big investment in the SWAC baseball. He believes that could be $1 million, $1 million surplus in terms of whatever city hosted. It would have been Jackson, of course. So whatever team joins the SWAC is going to probably have to have baseball. And you look at Tennessee State, they don't have that right now. Tuskegee, they're D2, they don't have baseball. They'll have to maybe add some sports. So there's a lot of moving pieces. I think right now you got to kind of slow roll this, take it for what it is. Welcome to the conference, Florida A&M, and just kind of see what's out there. Whatever schools are interested, would they make the investment, or even the ones that have all the sports that's required, are they willing to move up? Because there's obviously going to be more investment in terms of scholarships. So I think money is going to be the big factor that's going to drive a lot of this stuff. You hear about Bethune-Cookman. Some people have talked about that. They're going through some financial stuff, and both academically and athletically, and you hope they get through that. But then you add another team on the east side in football. If you stay with East-West, then that means two teams from the east have to go to the west. That's kind of been talked about many, many, many years ago. So there's still a lot of moving pieces in terms of getting a 12th team, if that's feasible, if that's possible. But for the meantime, I'm glad Florida A&M is in it. and it's going to really add to a lot of great rivalries. The travel's going to be interesting. Just a lot of good stuff to talk about when you talk about Florida A&M. I've never been to Tallahassee. I'm looking forward to making that trip down there and seeing what it's all about.
Well, I've been there twice, and Charles, let me tell you, you know how trips are. You don't get to sightsee a lot. What I can remember, it seemed like, and I know FAMU is not that far. It's even a smaller distance between FAMU and Florida State than LSU and Southern. I'm just kind of giving that for a reference. And it appeared that Florida State is like downtown, if you can call it that. And it's been many years. But going down there, their fan base they were outstanding. And it was 2 blowouts when I went. And you remember the history? Coach Richardson said in his press conference, somebody's going to get embarrassed. 65-18. I'll never forget that one. And then the time before, Southern was second in 1AA. Ranked second. It was FAMU's homecoming. I never forget. Never forgot. Seeing those players coming out of that locker room and, boy, they were pumped. Final score, 33-3. So it was a great environment. And all that to say this, I've got a question. Thanks, Derek. When Alabama A&M came, they had a probation year. That was the last expansion. Will FAMU be the same way, or was that just a thing of the past? Let's find out about that one. Do you know, Charles?
I do not know that one.
Because I know it's an exit fee for a family out of the Mid-Eastern Athletic Conference. There's not a fee for coming into the conference, Southwestern Athletic Conference.
Well, I did read the other day, and I know maybe some of their board in the process may have brought up, is there a fee to get out of the MEAC? The impression that I got was that those terms will be worked out, and that's not going to be a problem for FAMU exiting the MEAC.
No.
So I didn't see that as being that big of an issue, even though I thought about it, because you do. I mean, you see schools change conferences. They have to pay a fee to exit, and they have to pay a fee to enter. But obviously those things were worked out. So from what I read, I might be wrong about this. I didn't read of any numbers that were thrown around in terms of them getting out of the conference. I did read something, though, about if they did exit the conference, they would have to still play some MEAC teams. I don't know the truth to that. And for a couple of years after they leave the MEAC, I don't know if that's exactly correct or not.
But then, why you didn't hear about that when North Carolina A&T just left? And I think it was referenced when Hampton left. Yeah. But all of that all that's worked out. I mean, it's once again, it's a good fit, and it's going to happen. And they're going to come in, and let's just be honest. They feel confident. They feel they'll compete right away for multiple championships, multiple. So I think everybody will have to bring their A game now. If you didn't have to bring it before, which you did, but now even more so, you're gonna have to bring it. So when I rant and rave, Charles, about getting second place in football, now I've got to rant and rave to get a championship. You know, Alcorn fans are going to be spoiled as of late. Then you look at Grambling State. You know, they want to get back to winning championships. I mean, look, there's pressure. And I just think the pressure the fire's been turned up, the temperature's been turned up more so now. With families coming into the conference.
Well, I absolutely agree. I mean, I think now it's a gauntlet, and once it's done, and once the schedules are made out with FAMU on it, if you're fortunate enough to win the conference, considering what the conference looks like now, you've gone through that gauntlet, and you clearly deserve to be champions. I mean, because it's not going to be easy with Grambling, Alcorn, of course, Southern, Grambling, Florida A&M, Prairie View. I mean, it's not going to be easy. It's not going to be easy, and if you win the SWAC in football, you definitely have earned it, because it won't be a cakewalk.
And we're talking football, but again, there's baseball. I'm very intrigued by that. The championship, the MEAC championship for FAMU. I was talking to someone, and they was like, "Well, their baseball team is just average." No, they're good. And now they get a chance to compete in the conference. Charles, when you look at baseball, can't you see them? And I know Jack State's already have a relationship playing them. Southerners played them, last couple of years. They will compete early on in baseball, I would think.
I agree. Our baseball coach, Brett Richardson, was an assistant for many, many years at Florida A&M. So he knows that program well. And as a matter of fact, I think last year they had a series down there against Florida A&M. So he's very familiar with the baseball culture down there in that area. So it's, I think Florida A&M realizes when they come to the Southwestern Athletic Conference, you talk about everyone in the conference bringing their A game now, but Florida A&M's going to have to step it up as well in terms of trying to be competitive in the conference. SWAC baseball is no pushover. I mean, you've got a gauntlet there with Southern and with Texas Southern, Jackson State. Before things shut down, the Braves are playing well. I think they'll continue to improve. So in softball, it's no pushover either. So, hey, I mean, this is what it's all about here. I mean, if you want to see where you stand, you're gonna know, because in this conference, it's competitive in just about every sport, and we'll see where Florida A&M fits into that into this thing.
Mm-hmm. And we're talking about being competitive and what's at stake, financial gain as well. Now, I didn't get a chance to ask Mr. Gaucher about the Celebration Bowl, because that conversation hasn't come up a lot, but it has. But I'm looking at an article right now, and of course, Celebration Bowl opens the bowl season. It was an advantage for FAMU to, potential hosting a SWAC championship game, TV revenue. Their brand is already high to even match coming in the Southwestern Athletic Conference. And then the split with the Celebration Bowl. He said currently there's an 80-20% split of the $1 million distribution from the Celebration Bowl in the SWAC, compared to in the MEAC, it's 70-30. So the participant gets 80% in the SWAC, 70% in the Mid-Eastern Athletic Conference, and 30% is, put out among the rest of the institutions in the conference. So that was another benefit, financially, Charles, for FAMU to move to the Southwestern Athletic Conference.
Well, that's obviously a good thing. I mean, that extra 10%. And look, I mean, right now with the dynamics of what we're dealing with, economics are playing a bigger factor in this thing more so than ever before. I mean, you look at the travel. That's one of the reasons why that they left the MEAC, the travel amongst the East Coast, schools all the way up the coast from D.C. on down the line, as compared to in the SWAC, where you have schools 4 hours away at Bama State. Alcorn's probably about 8. The biggest trip's going to obviously be probably UAPB as well as Houston will probably be their longest trips. But it makes sense, and I think the one thing about teams when they change conferences, they've already done the math. They've already vetted. They've already done the math in terms of the economics. A&T did it. Obviously, going to the Big South, Hampton did it, and now Florida A&M is doing it. What's kind of surprising to me, Carlos, about this whole team, we've seen 3 teams leave the MEAC, how quiet that whole process is in terms of us knowing how this thing works. I mean, we didn't know about North Carolina A&T leaving the MEAC, at least I didn't, until the vote came to join the Big South. That was through 2 or 3 days before the vote. So, these processes are very quiet, and you don't know, at least I didn't, and quite a few people probably didn't until it actually came up. And, I'm anxious to see what's going to be left of the MEAC. I mean, Dr. Thomas has his work cut out for him. If you're an HBCU fan, you hope that the MEAC reloads and restocks and gets some other teams in there. But right now, the MEAC's kind of a wounded animal with your 3 prominent teams, Hampton, A&T, and FAMU leaving. What's going to be left of the MEAC in the next 2 or 3 years?
Yeah, and you've already heard conversation about a super HBCU conference. That talk has quietly started back with this pandemic hitting at the time, and we've often said that athletics was a changing landscape. And now with the pandemic, it's just made, expenses and traveling and conferences are trying to now be more localized geographically. Now you have to consider all of these things if you decide to make a decision to move, to another conference. So it's not an easy task. And so you have to plan and you have to organize and get everything down the best that you can as far as what's great for your institution. But it's going to be interesting. Have you heard any of that conversation about a super HBCU conference again?
I have not. I have not, to be quite honest with you. I mean, if you think about the logistics and the travel, I know Howard's a member of the SWAC in soccer, women's soccer. But if you think about the whole logistic dynamic, you talk about a team furthest north in D.C., that's Howard. Then you have a team further south in this perceived super conference, that's Houston, TSU, and Prairie View. That's a pretty good expense, especially once you get out of football. I think that if I'd like to see it, but realistically, do I see that happening anytime soon, especially now? No, I don't. I think it's good to talk about. It's fun to talk about. Generate even more buzz than what we got going on right now. But do I see that in terms of, going from Houston to Carolina, from Jackson to Carolina? And you're talking about pretty good bus rides, even from Baton Rouge to the Carolinas and D.C. and all that. You can fly, of course, but that's an expense. But I have not heard that, and I'll be surprised if that happens in the short term. Maybe in the long term, once things calm down here financially, maybe it's something that can be brought up and talked about, but I don't see that happening.
Yeah, long term, you never know. The economy may be much better in a few years from now with different leadership. Okay, I took a shot there. And everybody, it's inclusive for everybody. Jack says he wants to weigh in. He says from a competitive view, the MEAC was athletically equal to the SWAC. Therefore, FAMU should have no problem. They are not coming from a Division II league. No, I think FAMU will come in and be very competitive. Their move was based basically on economics and the potential earnings, the potential of a SWAC championship. They could literally host a SWAC championship game. But no, athletically, Charles, I don't think they'll have a problem. I think they'll fit in nicely.
No, I don't either. And really, when you think about it, a lot of our schools are playing Florida A&M anyway. I mean, if you think about it, in football, in basketball, in just about every sport, Florida A&M was on SWAC school schedules anyway. So I think it'll be a nice transition. I think a seamless transition because it already was happening in some shape, form, or fashion in some sport, whatever that may be, especially football.
I want to thank Derek, the big Alcorn fan that he is. FAMU's exit from the MEAC will require giving at least a 1 year's notice, June 2020. This exit will require BOT approval, Board of Trustees approval. No financial penalty would be expended upon exit. Exit amount would be withheld from. that would be extended upon exit amount would be withheld from school distribution. Thank you. The SWAC would help us generate gate revenue to offset the lack of MEAC distribution. Okay, thank you. So that kind of answered that. We were talking about that earlier. So they're in. That's a year's notice. So 2021, they'll start. Got to be excited.
Oh, I am.
Be excited, Charles.
I am. I'm really looking forward to it. To seeing Florida A&M, come back in the conference. And I mean, there's some Alcorn connections too. Our quarterbacks coach, who we just hired a month ago, he was at Florida A&M. Our baseball coach was an assistant at Florida A&M. Willie Simmons, the head football coach, was offensive coordinator at Alcorn, so he's familiar with the SWAC. So I'm really looking forward to seeing how the players play this out, as well as the coaches, because I think it'll be a lot of intensity, and it's a good thing for the SWAC too, because we've been talking about expansion for a long, long time, and it kind of fell in the SWAC's lap, and there's no way you would turn down a market like Tallahassee to help improve the brand, and that's what the commissioner's been talking about.
And Mr. Gaucher talked about his relationship when they approached the SWAC and Dr. McClellan, and that's a good thing when someone approaches you and you're not literally seeking out members. Now you probably have a plan. If someone would come to you, then you act on it. Here we go. Here's why this is a great move for you, and then you lay it out for that institution that's trying to come in. Don't miss that. That's a big point. And going further, if they decide to do 12 teams, which if you ask the general population of SWAC followers, they say you got to have they want a 12 team, but they have a plan to have 11 teams, and I'm sure they'll have a plan to have 12 teams. Everybody just got to be on the same page.
Well, this was a fast track, Carlos, because if you think about it, A&T, what was reported when A&T decided to leave the MEAC, that process started last summer. And it just was worked on little bit by little bit over a period of time. And then boom, they leave the MEAC and go to the Big South. Seems to me that this was kind of a fast track. I mean, Florida A&M contacted the SWAC, and this thing was fast tracked. A lot faster process as far as what we know than what it took for A&T and Hampton leaving the MEAC. So that just shows you how much interest there was with FAMU and the SWAC.
Yeah, and I think, in my opinion, when you know you're going to leave a situation, whether it's bad or you just ready to leave, you put a plan in motion early. And you kind of keep it low key as much as you can. Because I know, Charles, you have tremendous sources all over the place. You'll get word of it. But they were able to do it and move quickly. But I'm sure it was a timeline and a process that they were able to do as far as to get the ball rolling. Now I look forward to 2021 from an athletic standpoint, from a pandemic standpoint. Just hopefully things are better. Oh, by the way, in the closing, got about less than a minute. You did see where Alabama had players tested positive already.
Yep.
Come on, y'all need to have nothing to say about that.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm speechless because it's like, here we go. I mean, when I read about it and we were texting about it, I'm speechless about it, and we haven't even gotten started yet. So
it's a new reality.
It is a new reality, and how will schools adjust as if players test positive? You have to self-quarantine and all that. We're just getting started. I took a big gulp when you brought that up, because it's something that's not unexpected. That's for sure.
Yeah, well, it's just not good. Not good. And unfortunately, I think it's just the beginning.
Yeah.
Have a great weekend, Charles. We appreciate the time.
All right, stay safe, guys.
You too. Want to thank Alvin Hollins, Brandon B.J. Jones, Courtney Gaucher, Charles Edmonds, Dr. Michael Prince, as always, producing today's show. Make sure you tune in every Saturday morning from 10 a.m. to 12 noon Central Standard Time for the Carlos Brown Show, heard exclusively right here on the Open Mic Broadcast Network and Spreaker.com. Until next Saturday, as always, peace and God bless.